Chapter 2. A Dejected Gwen. Gwen swung through the night sky, her thoughts racing as fast as the wind in her hair. The battle with Rhino had been close, too close for comfort. If it weren't for Ankah, she'd likely be lying in a hospital bed right now, or worse. As she approached her apartment, the guilt of involving him in her dangerous life weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her father, George Stacy, a commissioner in the NYPD, had no idea about her secret life as Spider-Woman. If he found out, she could only imagine the lecture she'd get about the risks she was taking, and now she'd dragged an innocent kid into it. Landing lightly on her fire escape, she quickly unclipped her mask and stuffed it into the pocket of her torn suit. She had to get inside before her dad noticed she was gone. Sneaking into the apartment, she peeled off the rest of her costume, wincing at the bruises and scrapes marring her skin. The shower was a heavenly relief, the hot water washing away the grime and pain of the night's fight. As she let the water cascade over her, she couldn't shake the feeling of doubt that had crept in. Was she getting weaker? Or was it just the burden of her secret identity taking its toll? Her mind drifted to Peter Parker, her late friend and mentor. The promise she'd made to him, to carry on the legacy of Spider-Man, felt more like a curse some days. She'd failed him so many times, and now she had Ankah to worry about. But she knew deep down that she couldn't do this alone. The city was too big, the threats too numerous. And with great power comes great responsibility, a saying that had been etched into her soul since the day she'd first donned the suit. Stepping out of the shower, she wrapped a towel around herself and stared into the mirror. Her eyes were tired, and she looked more like a tired teenager than a superhero. But she knew that she had to keep pushing, for Peter, for the city, and now for Ankah. She couldn't let anyone else get hurt because she wasn't strong enough. Drying off, she pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, her thoughts still racing. The suit she'd been wearing lay in a crumpled heap on the floor. She picked it up gently, the fabric whispering secrets of battles won and lost. Gwen knew she had to be more than just a costume, she had to be a symbol of hope, a beacon in the dark for those who needed her. And if that meant letting Ankah in, if it meant turning her classmate into a sidekick, then so be it. But she'd make sure he was ready, that he knew the gravity of what he was signing up for. With a heavy sigh, she tossed the suit into her secret laundry basket and padded into the living room. Her father looked up from his paper, his eyes crinkling with concern. "You okay, Gwen?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just a long day." He nodded, his gaze lingering for a moment before returning to the news. Gwen's heart clenched. She hated lying to him, but she had no choice. Her secret was too big, too dangerous to share. And now she had another to protect, Ankah Miller. The next day at school, Gwen couldn't help but watch Ankah out of the corner of her eye. He was so eager, so full of life and potential. It was easy to see why Peter had taken him under his wing. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing with fire. If her dad found out, if anyone found out, it could ruin everything. Yet, she knew that without Ankah, she might not have made it out of that alley last night. The bell rang, signaling the end of another school day. Gwen packed up her things, her mind already racing ahead to the training she had planned. Training she hoped would prepare him for the dangers to come. Training she hoped would save both their lives. As they walked home together, she felt the weight of her decision. But when she saw the gleam in Ankah's eyes, the way he talked about the gadgets he'd been working on, she knew she'd made the right call. He was eager to learn, to help. And maybe, just maybe, together they could make a real difference. Once they were a safe distance from the battle site, Gwen swung up to the rooftops, her movements smooth and practiced. Ankah followed, his makeshift grappling hook allowing him to keep up with surprising ease. They reached her apartment, and she nodded to him. "This is as far as you go tonight," she said, her voice firm. "You need to get home before anyone notices." He looked at her for a moment, his eyes full of questions, but then nodded. "I understand." He paused, his gaze lingering on the card in his hand. "Thank you, Gwen." "Don't thank me yet," she replied with a small smile. "You haven't seen what I have planned for your training." Ankah grinned, his excitement unbridled. "I can't wait." With a wave, he disappeared into the night, leaving Gwen to climb down her fire escape and sneak back into her apartment. She knew she had to face the music with her dad, but first, she had to face the music with herself. Gwen slipped into her room, her muscles protesting every movement. The battle with Rhino had been brutal, and she knew she was pushing herself too hard. Her thoughts drifted to Peter, his smiling face appearing in her mind's eye. He'd been her rock, her confidant, her everything. And she'd failed him in the worst way possible. The guilt was a constant, gnawing pain that she couldn't shake. But she'd made a promise to carry on his legacy, to be the hero he believed she could be. And now, with Ankah by her side, she had a chance to make good on that promise. The water was hot, almost scalding, as she stepped into the shower. The steam filled the room, wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. She closed her eyes and let the water wash over her, washing away the grime of the fight, and with it, some of the doubt. When she opened her eyes again, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She'd train Ankah, make him strong enough to help her. And together, they'd protect the city. The next morning, Gwen waited outside Ankah's apartment building, her heart racing. She'd barely slept, her mind a whirlwind of training regimens and potential missions. When he emerged, looking a little bewildered but mostly excited, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. He was going to be her partner in this crazy world of heroism, and she'd make sure he was ready. The training was grueling, pushing both of them to their limits. Gwen taught Ankah the basics of combat and stealth, the importance of quick thinking and precision. They worked tirelessly, the city their playground and classroom. And as the days turned into weeks, she saw the change in him. The shy, awkward kid she knew from school was slowly morphing into someone strong, capable, and fiercely loyal. But the shadows of doubt still lurked. Was she making a mistake? Was he ready for the dangers that awaited them? She knew the risks, knew the price of failure. Yet, every time she saw the determination in Ankah's eyes, she was reminded of Peter's unwavering belief in her. And she knew she had to have faith in him too. One night, as they patrolled the streets, Gwen received a tip about a break-in at a local lab. The same lab where Peter had worked before his death. Her stomach twisted, the memories of that fateful night flooding back. It had been her fault, her inexperience that had led to Peter's death. But she couldn't dwell on the past, she had a mission to complete. They arrived at the lab to find the security guards tied up, the alarm blaring. Gwen's instincts kicked in, and she swung into action, her spider sense tingling with danger. Ankah followed, his eyes wide but focused. Together, they took down the thieves, their movements synchronized, their trust in each other unshakable. As the last thief hit the ground, Gwen turned to Ankah, her chest heaving. "Good work," she said, her voice tight with emotion. She didn't dare let him see how much his involvement had affected her, how much she needed him. "Now let's get out of here before the cops show up." They swung away from the scene, their hearts racing in sync with the sirens in the distance. Gwen's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She'd been failing in her battles lately, and the fear of letting Peter down was a constant, gnawing presence. But tonight, with Ankah at her side, she'd felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he was the change she needed. They arrived at her apartment building, and she led him to the rooftop, her thoughts racing. "I know it's a lot to take in," she began, her voice shaky. "But you saved me tonight." Ankah's eyes widened. "It's no big deal," he said, his voice earnest. "I just wanted to help." "It is a big deal," Gwen insisted, her voice firm. "You're more than just a fan now, you're part of this." He beamed at her, his pride unmistakable. "I'll do anything to help you," he said, his words a vow. Gwen nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I know you will," she whispered. "But you have to be ready for what's coming. This isn't a game, Ankah. Lives are at stake." He nodded, his expression solemn. "I'm ready," he said, and she knew he meant it with a sigh. Gwen turned and swung away, leaving Ankah to make his own way home. She had to face her father, to pretend like nothing had happened. But deep down, she knew that everything had changed. The promise she'd made to Peter weighed on her, but now she had a partner, someone to share the burden. Once inside, she peeled off her suit, her body aching from the night's exertion. The scent of sweat and fear clung to the fabric, a stark reminder of her limitations. She stepped into the shower, the water scalding hot against her bruised skin. As she scrubbed away the grime of battle, she made a silent vow to herself: she'd get stronger, for Peter, for the city, and for Ankah. The days that followed were a blur of school, training, and secret missions. Gwen pushed herself harder than ever before, driven by the knowledge that Ankah was counting on her. She saw the potential in him, the same potential Peter had seen in her. And she was determined to help him reach it, but the shadows of doubt still lurked. Every time she faced a new threat, every time she felt her strength waning, she questioned her decision. What if she was putting Ankah in danger? What if she couldn't protect him like Peter had protected her? The weight of her promise to Peter was a heavy burden to bear, and she felt it with every fiber of her being. And yet, when she saw the way Ankah's eyes lit up with excitement, the way he threw himself into their nightly patrols, she knew she'd made the right choice. Together, they could be more than just two teenagers playing at being heroes. They could be a force to be reckoned with, a duo that could tackle the darkest corners of the city. But first, she had to conquer her own demons. She had to face the guilt that haunted her every time she donned the Spider-Woman suit. It was a battle she'd been fighting for months, but with Ankah by her side, she felt like she might just stand a chance. The next night, as they swung through the city, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. With each criminal they brought to justice, she felt Peter's spirit with her, guiding her. And as they landed on the rooftop of Ankah's apartment building, she knew she wasn't fighting alone anymore. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." Ankah looked at her, his eyes shining in the moonlight. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Gwen." Chapter 2 End.